with Alexandru and Ethel, the colleagues working on the repository of links, your Europe portal. So we share with you this kind of a scoping paper, and today we will give you a refresh, a reminder, and we can also invite you to take the floor in case there are some angles, some questions still to be clarified. And once we agree on the scope, we can jump to discussing the bulk of the work, and basically it's a proposal for a service data model for the gateway. So first of all, we will give you an overview on what could be the concepts to be prioritized according to these use cases that we are scoping. And based on this, we will start discussing the draft model, taking as an example one particular case to see how we could fit this data model in this example. And then we will jump into other concepts that probably has a bit of less priority number one, but also to be considered. So in case it should be prioritized. And finally, other additional non-prioritized concepts in case you consider some of them should be part of this exercise, but always keeping in mind that we should try to do something simple that in the first round, let's say in the first phase of the gateway, could work well. And not to do something extremely complicated. And finally, we will give you what are the next steps for this project and for the creation of this data model, and more or less the homework that we will be assigning to all of you. So on the scope, I will give the floor to Florian. He can explain you. The paper was shared with all of you. And basically, what we are targeting here is a very simple use case. Your Europe portal is going to evolve, or is evolving basically as a purely search engine. So basically, what we are trying to do here is to add some metadata information so that the semantic tagging can be done along with the repository of links to collect information about the different services behind this repository of links, in order to improve the searchability and findability of the citizens and businesses when they want to do something with internal market, in the kind of services falling under this regulation, the Single Digital Gateway regulation. So what we are trying to do is to improve the results of the search engine. All of us, and it's also something totally, let's say, acknowledged by the colleagues of GROW. There is room for improvement as it is now. The idea is to improve the quality of the results, the harmonization, to get a bit of also the harmonization on what kind of metadata information you get along with the results all over the countries, not to have very enriched data in some cases, even between sectors. So try to do something that could be extended and roll out across different areas, sectorial areas being touched upon by the regulation. So in a way, the idea is to provide minimum information per result to help the user to decide easily on what are the links that are relevant to them. The context obviously is important here, and this is where we need your help. We are talking about the gateway. We are talking about internal market. We are not talking about a very broad, let's say, search context like Google. In a way, this is a disadvantage because we need to know well what is the business and what are the users looking for. But on the other side, the advantage is that we are narrowing down to very specific, let's say, domain areas, administrative procedures, assistance service. So it's a bit of a trade-off. And the problem statement also is to have some kind of metadata specification for the provision, to help the provision and the maintenance of the links and the metadata information associated to these links as the basis for the information that should be part of your Europe ecosystem, to do something that is sustainable, that could scale well. So Florian, maybe you can expand a bit better these ideas now. I give you the floor back to you. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, as you can notice, this scoping and problem statement is not coming from anywhere. It's coming from the discussions we had last time during the previous webinar. And so, as Miguel mentioned, here we clearly focus on the European level, but as he also mentioned, we are looking at it from two perspectives. One, improving the quality of the results and trying to harmonize the results between member states. And the second is making this improvement in a way that is not requiring a lot of maintenance and provision efforts from each member states, because it's simply, if tomorrow you need to keep or annotate manually HTML pages with metadata tags for all services and with a lot of metadata, it's simply a lot of work for maybe not the added value that we would expect. So yeah, we need to, as Miguel mentioned, also keep a certain trade-off between those two perspectives. And with no further ado, let's move on to the next slide, where for those who have come through the report, the report on the scoping, the small document. This is just giving again the context and an example. Sorry for the small layout issue. We don't know what happened, but yeah, it's still readable. But so, on the first perspective, the objective is really thinking about how can we minimize the number of clicks and in general the time needed by users when searching on your Europe and finding the right information. And in here you see that we thought about a couple of metadata that could be used for this in order to describe the different services, whether there are assistance services, procedures within the SDGR, etc. And from there, you see, for example, here the policy code, and behind that, thanks to the code, we would find the policy name coming directly from the SDGR. We have the preferred name or alternative name, basically the name of the service that is used within your country. A short description, the link to the web page, basically a URL, the country code using, for example, ISO, etc., etc. So all examples of metadata, and then when we go to the next slide, what we see is, as a user, when we type, this is just an example, I'm not targeting Finland or Helsinki at all, and I think it's a good example, by the way, where we typed on your Europe 3 keywords, searching for information about how to apply to university, and basically you see some results. What we have acknowledged is, or observed, is simply that depending on the city or country you type in, you will get different results, and sometimes even results that do not make immediate sense compared to the search. So that's about the harmonization aspect or the quality of the results. And second is the question, when you see the results, you can wonder, okay, on which link should I click? And so the idea that we would like to discuss also as part of the scope of this exercise is which metadata are required in order to be able to quickly get which link is the right one, which search result is the best one on which I should click as a user. That's one aspect, and the second aspect is, of course, as I mentioned, the quality and harmonization of the results. So if I type apply University Helsinki, how to make sure I get the right results. And that's also where the metadata behind can definitely help. And so in this example, you see we type the 3 keywords, apply University Helsinki, and if we go to the next slide, here's just an example. If the set of metadata that we used at the example 2 slides ago are now used first to improve the results, and second to display directly some additional information in the search results. This is just an example, it's up to discussion, but this would be a way where someone could decide, okay, I'm applying for a bachelor degree. This is clear from the title, and I can either directly click on the link, or I can get some related information about, in this case, it might be too small for you to read, but in this case, between bachelor degree or master degree, depending on simply my situation. So this is an example to initiate the discussion. We are not stating that this should be the set of metadata that should be there, but it's also based, of course, on the inputs we received thanks to the different mem states who contributed to the spreadsheet. So voilà, this is about the scoping document. I don't know at this stage if there are comments on this or if the objective and scope are clear. If not, don't hesitate to raise hand or to indicate in the chat. Yeah.
Does everybody agree with this scope also? So if you don't agree, or if there's some nuances to be added, let's say, maybe also let us know, because I think it's pretty important, because it's very important, because that's what we're going to work with in the upcoming weeks, also together with you.
From my point of view, nowadays we have a problem with the findability of the services published linked to the SDG. So I fully agree with this approach. We need some solution to solve that problem.
Okay, thanks, Anna.
Maybe just to know if everybody indeed follows that idea. You agree, just type a +1 in the chat, and if you don't, -1 is also allowed, of course. But just to know whether everybody is okay with this, can you please in the chat indicate by typing +1 if you're okay? That would be helpful. So yeah, I'll do it as an example.
And while you are doing this, an important thing that I didn't mention is simply that if now we are focusing on search results at European level through Your Europe, this is an exercise that, if we harmonize and use it in each member state, that is basically also helpful for your own services or at national level to improve the findability and searchability of your information directly. For example, through any search engine, you could improve the way the results are indexed and the information that pops up for each result. So here we are focusing at European level, but it doesn't mean that because of that you cannot reuse the outcome of this exercise at national or regional or any other administrative level. And based on this scoping exercise, or the scope that we propose, the approach is as follows. As you know, we have done the analysis of the information requirements coming from the regulation. Last time, we have prioritized the information in function of its added value for the end user. So that's something we have continued based on the scoping exercise thanks to your input. So so far 7 member states have replied as part of the 10 member states invited. It's not because we have prioritized this and that we are already proposing an initial version today of a first model for discussion that we cannot adapt it in the future. But basically, if you have further input, you can still share it via the spreadsheet or directly via GitHub. We'll come back to that. And today we focus really on the first data model that we have built thanks to this analysis and your inputs. And on which we will apply the methodology presented in the first webinar. So through different iterations and proposing a class diagram. And after this webinar, tables with definitions of the terms, etc., on which you can react through GitHub, and based on that, we'll progressively get to a final data model. One question we had is about the last row in this table. So by the end of this exercise, we would like to have a data model described in a specification. The question is a bit, okay, what should be the final format of this specification? For me, a class diagram and an HTML specification, so basically a web page where you have the entire descriptions available is what is the easiest. But if you are looking for other machine readable formats or other formats simply, you can also indicate it in the chat, or yeah, just let us know. And then I propose to directly move to the core of today's discussion about the example that Miguel mentioned and the proposed model we have made. And yeah, Maxime, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Florian. Okay, so the idea is indeed to present to you here the first model we have created and run through it step by step and see if it aligns with your expectations or not. And so we will present it by the use of an example and run through it, and I'm building up the model step by step. And so please intervene at any moment if you have any questions or other ideas, because that's really the goal of this exercise and this webinar, to have a real discussion with all of you. Yeah, so I would say intervene when needed. So to quickly remind you, so how did we get to this model that we will show to you in a few slides? We used your prioritization sheets. So we would really like to thank you for everyone that gave your input on the sheets, because this allowed us to come up with this first model and to really take step forwards in this exercise. So if not done yet, you can still share the prioritization sheet. We can still take it into account. But we use this as a basis for the model we will now present. So what did we do last time in the webinar? We listed a few concepts from the model, and the idea was to get so that everyone got to know the idea of prioritizing the concepts and get everyone up to speed. So as primary source, we of course used the sheets that you shared with us, the Excels, and the input from the webinar with less concepts listed. We used it as a cross-checking, let's say, to see if it aligned or not. And we can say that most of it aligned. So going over now to the modeling aspect. First, some general notes on the modeling for those who are not used to the, let's say, UML modeling. So all the classes that we will discuss will have a unique identifier, but we will not show them. On the right, you see two classes. So first class 1, which is then a major concept, and a second class 2. And these classes can have attributes listed there. Mandatory properties we indicate with the cardinalities 1, 1, and optionals 0 to 1 or 0 to n. So this is how we will go to work in the following slides. Okay, so let's dive into it. We will start this exercise with a use case, which is the following. Me, so you'll see it on the left, me as a Belgian. I want to move to Sweden, and I want to get information on how to register, how to import my Belgian vehicle in Sweden. So that's the idea. But how do I want to do this? Okay, I go to your Europe portal, and I will usually type in, okay, I want to register a car in Sweden, so register car Sweden. And additionally, I can also use the desired result, which is a registration certificate. And then what I want to know is, okay, when I search on these terms, I just want on the first or the second output, the key information for me to filter, okay, this is the website I need to be at. And these results will mainly be, am I in the right country? Is it the right language? Can I understand the web page to which I will be guided? So this will all be in the first, let's say, description. And then based on this description, I want to go to the web page, which you see here on the right. So the outcome would be that you end up, as one of the first results, end up in the ideal web page, which in this case would be for my vehicle to register it, would be the vehicle import and verification of origin. So the goal of this model, as we said earlier, is really, okay, how, based on the metadata we are providing here, can I optimize my search so that I get the right results? So what we will do now is we'll run through this use case on the left step by step and build up a model based on it. So let's go to the first step. You'll see on the top left the first part of the use case. So I want to have information on register my vehicle in Sweden. And then you will see on the bottom right the two classes we have identified. So first of all, registering a vehicle in Sweden, it will be a public service, vehicle import and verification of origin, you see, which we then identified the most important properties or attributes. As you will see, we identified name, description, type, which is the type here is the type from the repository, from the regulation to start with. So you have procedures, assisted services, and then the policy code from the regulation. You see it also, it's V2, registering a motor vehicle. And then we also searched on the expected output, for which we identified the additional class output. And there we just identified it with a name. So I think what would be interesting to hear from all of you now, put it in the chat or you can intervene, is are we capturing the most important information here for service? Do we need an additional description for the class output? So the output is the result of your public service. So when applying for a registration in vehicle, the output would be your certificate and your license plate, let's say, that you get. And you'll see also an additional question there. How do we capture terms that are specific to information procedures and assistance services? Because some information will not only be for according to the regulation, there are certain informations such as a cost, let's say, that is applicable for a procedure, but not purely for information on rules, obligations, and guidelines. So there we also need to see, do we create specific subclasses or will we use optional attributes or classes? So I don't know if anyone has some comments on this first part of the model.
Sorry, just to be more, I mean, if I am correct, we understanding what you explained. In this example, what I expected as the output of this procedure is a certificate for the vehicle registration.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so here indeed, as the output, we have the vehicle registration certificate. Yeah, indeed.
And our key question, I think, related to all the information we'll share and present is, if we relate this information as proposed here to the use case of the scoping exercise, then the question is this relevant to improve the searchability? So to have the right search results, do we need to document the metadata to describe the metadata about the public service, about the output? From the inputs we received through the spreadsheet and our own logic, we think that yes, it makes sense, but that's what we want to discuss as well.
If I may, from my point of view, when we are talking about procedures, not about general rules, but only about procedures, indeed, you have several procedures that are related with the same concept, but those procedures have different aim. So it is difficult for us, from foreign people. For instance, when I read your example with the name and the description of the public service, I could not figure out that the output is a certificate. So from my point of view, it's really useful to have a kind of list of outputs that could help users to identify the result that they are going to get using that procedure. So yes, I think the output could be very helpful, at least for procedures.
Okay.
And Valentini, you raised a hand. You want to react?
Yeah. From a citizen's perspective, the policy to see as a tag, as a label, let's say, in the return results for my query, the policy code doesn't it's not added value to me as a citizen, the policy code, not the description, but the code, okay? And I'm not sure even if I was, it would make a difference to know if it's an information or a procedure. I'm asking how I'm gonna register my vehicle, and I guess I want to quickly select the right link, and I want to see information if I can do it, yeah, the output, of course, yeah, and a short description of the service, yeah, and maybe the channel, if it's something I can do it fully online, or do I need or there's also, do I have to send some documents by email to the authority or something? So how I'm gonna actually perform the application, the process, blah, 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 blah. And maybe also it would make sense to see if information or for the procedure or just information about the rules and obligations is in English, available in which languages? In which languages? Yeah, just some first thinking is that from my side.
Yeah, thanks for that. And before you react, Anna, simply stating that we will come back to channel and language a bit later. So Norris will touch upon those aspects. And also to come back to something you said, Ana Rosa, about a list of output. Do you mean a list of names of outputs, or a list of types of outputs?
Types.
Types, okay.
And regarding how else information you could show, we need to be. I think we need to be caution on this, because this is just to show us results in the search. So of course there are a lot of description and information that it should be shown to the user. But here I think we should discuss about what information is relevant to understand from the list of results of the search, which is the proper link to click in. So of course, when you enter into the link, you need to see much more information about the procedure. But for this ambiguous, which is the best result to click on, I think we should avoid to enter into too much detail.
Yeah, you're right. And so there is first, how can we improve the indexing of the results? And that's more a back-end process. It's basically how do you improve the algorithm to find the right information and show it in a certain order. That's the first thing we are trying to improve through this exercise. And of course, how do we improve the way people are able to understand the information and take a decision on which link they should click? And I think that's more related to the second part you mentioned, but indeed, we should avoid providing them with too much information, because then what's the purpose? And they will be lost in finding the right information within too much, while they should simply click on the right link and then get all the information about this link.
But Florian, you said two parts. You mentioned two parts. I see three parts. I mean, because the third part is when you enter into the page, into the national page, that is the third part. And then in that page, you will find much more information about the procedure. But that is not something in the results, even to select the proper link. The information to show should be limited.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And maybe we can quickly react to the policy code, because from that aspect, the policy code, indeed, it's not made for the end user, but it's also made for the harmonization on the back end to know, this metadata, it's about this public service, and at national level, you can name it in different ways, this public service, but according to the regulation, it corresponds to this procedure or assistance service, or in this case, a procedure. But that's the idea of the policy code. But indeed, it should not be used directly, or it should not be shown directly to the end user. Yeah, exactly, Valentine. It's already there because it was already part of the metadata for URL. So in the implementing act of last June. So I don't think it's, or you can correct me, but normally it's already there, and that's why we included it as well.
On the output, other participants, do you also perceive that it could bring added value to have a kind of code list with types of outputs?
When we say type of outputs, Miguel,
whether it's let's say a certificate, an authorization, a license, this type of what you get out of the administrative procedure, an authorization, to harmonize a little bit so that the user can better understand, exactly, this is what I'm looking for, the license to open this business here, or administrative authorization, or a permit, or
anyone else wants to react on this? Please feel free also to use the chat.
Well, we can also move on and of course come back to it in case there are questions or comments. And on the type of output, there are already some existing lists that we can propose.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Maybe, sorry, Anna also can contribute. I'm thinking, if I was the user, what difference does it make to me if what I get is a certificate or a license or a permit?
It's not about the.
No,
yes,
sorry.
the problem is when I read the public service description, it's a name, vehicle import and verification of origin. From that, I don't know what is the procedure about. Really, I mean, if I were used to this procedure, perhaps I know the output very well, and I know that vehicle import and verification of origin is providing to me a certificate of the vehicle registration. But sometimes when you use the natural language to say something, it is not so clear. Perhaps it's very clear for the people who write that, but not for the people who is reading that. So when you are accessing to a procedure, to an administrative procedure, the outputs are not so variable. I mean, there are not a big set of possible outputs. Of course, there are things that we should take into account, like the slight difference between license or permit, or that is something that we should discuss, because it's not clear if that slight difference between terms are relevant. But if I get in, for instance, if I'm going to get for instance, it's only for applying, and then I'm going only to get the what is the name, the acknowledge of my applying, but not any result of the applying. Or if I am going to get a certificate, or if I'm going to get a license or any similar synonym of a license, that it could be useful for foreigners to understand what is the purpose of the procedure, because, as I said, natural language sometimes is very ambiguous, and more for foreigners.
Yeah, and so because our idea with output was twofold, of course you can decide, if you make it very clear for the end user, you can directly display it. Or in this case also, for example, you see that in the keywords used for the search, we used things that we thought was kind of logical for an end user, like register vehicle Sweden or register car Sweden. And the register part is usually something that you will find related also potentially to the output. Because register and registration is basically using the same lexical field, and thanks to that, a search algorithm will be able to use that to connect it to a good search result. So that was also a second.
Maybe this is something we can discuss. We can put this output on hold. We can reflect a little bit on potential categories, and maybe have a separate discussion in another webinar. No.
Yeah, or offline through GitHub, and see whether we need to
because
further elaborate
as
on
I
it.
see, a citizen, indeed, what you said, Florian, is crystal clear. Sometimes you are an entrepreneur or even a citizen. You want to set up a business, and basically you don't understand sometimes this very administrative language. So you can type indistinctively license, permit. So we need to reflect whether a unique category, considering all these keywords, even if from an administrative point of view there is a difference, something that is grouped in one category, and then in the result is shown exactly the exact terminology, but in the search it's like all of this is taken into account because the citizen doesn't know. And this could be one category, because if we say one category is license, another category is permit, another category is authorization, the citizens will be puzzled in many cases. but we move on, and we can discuss another day. We can identify from the regulation also if there is something more detailed.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so we'll propose something to which you can further react through GitHub.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on then to the next topic, which is the public organization. So if you see again on the top left, when going through the results, it might be interesting when you're going through it to know, okay, am I at the right public organization? And in our case, we were applying for a driving license. So in this case, if I see the public organization Swedish Transport Agency popping up, the chances that I'm on the right link, as the name says, will increase, of course. So this will be related to our public service, registering our vehicle. So our question is to you all. We have now the name for a public organization, but identified. But what else would be interesting information to include? So you have that you think could improve the search or the immediate results. So you can put it in the chat, or yeah.
If I may,
Sure.
we here we have two different perspectives. If you are in a federal country like Germany or Spain, or you are not. So at the end, if you are not in a decentralized organization, then which for the user, if the Swedish Transport Agency is the public organization or it is a different one, is not so relevant. It's informative, but it's not relevant to understand the procedure or to pick up the correct procedure. So, but when we are in a federal country, we have, and not only federal country, also for procedures of municipalities, you could have the same procedure, but in different municipalities or in different regional governments or whatever. So in this case, I think that more than the public organization is the scope, the geographical scope of that procedure that is, of course, related to the public organization, but not the name itself of the public organization. It's informative, as I said, but you cannot distinguish which is the best procedure only with the name of the public organization.
Okay, but yeah, indeed. But in that case, the location would indeed become relevant, which we will touch upon in the following slides.
Not the location, because I can have, for instance, the Spanish tax agency is in Madrid, but that doesn't mean that the scope of the procedure is only Madrid.
Yeah.
So it's not the location, but the geographical scope of the procedure. So the competence of the Spanish tax agency is a national competence. So the geographical scope is Spain. But for instance, the Madrid tax agency is the scope is the regional government of Madrid, and it's of course related to the public organization. It's not the location; it's the geographical scope of the competence.
Yeah. That's a distinction that we see on a lot of public services, I think, where the policy is determined on the national level, but the actual execution or where citizens or businesses should actually go to initiate the public service is on a local or regional level. That's basically what we're saying. So, for instance, even I now them for asking for a new identity card. Of course, it's a national policy, but if you want to get a new identity card, you go to your local municipality and you initiate the public service. Is it a bit the same what we're saying here?
Yes, for instance, for the vehicle registration, you have to pay three different taxes that to the national government, to the regional government, to the local government. So depending on what taxes you are trying to pay, the procedure is depending on the location. Sorry, on the municipality, and within the municipality, the regional government. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So from a user perspective, what matters at the end of the day is the service coverage by whatever competent authorities. What is the area, right?
Yes, the geographical area of the competence.
The geographical area covered by the particular service. So if I'm setting up a business in one region and I see this procedure, even if it's offered by this authority, that maybe is more.
No, it is depending on the public organization. I mean, the Spanish tax agency does not competences depend different geographical area depending on the procedure. So all the procedures that are responsibility of the Spanish tax agency have the same geographical scope.
National.
The same for, yes, it's the same for the Galician tax agency.
Yeah, this geographical coverage makes more sense, obviously, when we talk about regions and local governments.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, but which the end user will not always know, right?
Yes.
It may also
Exactly.
depend from one country.
That's why.
Yeah. Okay, but we'll dive into the geographical area, or what we call location. But I get your distinction, Ana Rosa. Any other reactions on this?
Marco also added contact details for immediate results, and I think it's also closely related or somehow related to what we just discussed. So it's also about a citizen knowing where to go to actually when they want to and who to contact when they want to initiate or have any questions about the procedure that they want to start or that is running. And I think that's something that is really interesting for a citizen or a business or an end user in general. That they know who to call or mail or how to which website to go to when they want to start something or want to follow up on certain things. And that's not always not always the same organization as the competent authority, the one responsible for, let's say, the policy around and the legislation around the public service. So I guess that's also the point that I guess that I'm covering a couple of points altogether, but it also covers the point of Marco. If that's not true, Marco, please tell me.
No, it's true. Also for smaller authorities, direct contact is usually the preferred way of doing business, especially with companies.
Yeah.
So I think the shorter the lines, the better. So if you, Google does it as well, eh? Mm-hmm. They show contact details, the phone number, and the link to the website directly in the search results.
Yes.
That has a reason. Shorter lines.
Yeah. Great
point. We'll also come back to the contact point. So should we move on? But so I understand that we keep public organization, but that we'll need to still discuss how we describe it. And at this stage, we should not keep public organization with a lot of details, but simply because it's a placeholder to make connections with other important information, such as contact details, geographic area or location, etc.
One more comment on public organization. At the end, the name of public organizations, mostly at the national level, used to change a lot, at least in our country. So sometimes one of the procedures is handled by the Ministry of Education and Universities, but in the next government, it's tackled by the Ministry of Education and Professional Training. So the name of the organization used to change a lot. So that should be also in mind.
So you mean that what is important in the end is to have a unique identifier that is persistent but the name itself, it's more.
No. It's not only the unique identifier, because how do you manage unique identifiers when the ministries are changing? I'm not just renaming the ministry, but I do in a different organization. So, for instance, in the previous government we had 14 ministries, and in the current government we have 22 ministries. So even the unique codes are not possible. So
yeah. We have also an interesting question from Valentina, where the location, the geographical coverage should be linked to the service or to the organization.
Let's switch to that in a minute.
Yeah. Indeed.
Where we can have a placeholder for the discussion.
Yeah. So we'll bring that up again.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to the language, as was also mentioned before in the chat, I think. So a public service, of course, will be described in a specific language. I think one of the key questions here is, okay, which code do we use? For example, in the repository of links, the ISO code was used as presented here. So I think this one is quite straightforward. If anyone has comments on this. And don't worry, we will come back to the language of the web pages in a second.
Yeah, meaning that this language is the language in which a user can receive or get extra information about the public service, but it's different from the language of the web page to which the person can click.
What do you mean by receive information?
It's, for example, you have the contact details on a local authority, and you have next to that a language on which the person can expect to receive information, if through phone or via email, or that's this language. And when I refer to information, that's what I meant.
So is this clear, the distinction? Miguel, please go ahead.
No, it's the language to, if I'm not mistaken, Florian, to interact in the first place with authorities.
As opposed
but the question is this information from your side, in your view, is this relatively easy to get information from? I mean, I'm talking I'm talking when there is a second language, not the native language of the country. I don't know. Do you think this is relevant?
My problem here with the language is that this is something that could vary a lot. I mean, depending on not only the public organization, but the unit that is processing the service. And perhaps now I have resources to have people speaking English, but then I don't have enough resources, and then I only attend in Spanish. So to have that information into metadata, and I have to maintain that information, for me is very
complicated.
Yes.
Troublesome.
Yeah.
And also, it's not relevant. I'm just thinking aloud. It's not more relevant at this earliest stage when you are searching for information, eventually the language of where to find information, the web page, these kind of things.
At the end, the information of the procedure, or if the general rule is mandatory to provide in English, but a different thing is to provide interaction in another language. So it could be useful, but for me, to have it in metadata is problematic.
I think so.
And sorry, it also depends on the organization, not organization, the public organization, but how you organize the public attendance. I mean, for instance, our ministries and our competent authority mostly have a unique contact point for everything related to that ministry. It's not depending on the service. It's a general contact point. But perhaps in other competent authority, it depends on the unit. So they have several different contacts. So I don't know. At the end, that is a very sensitive information that could change a lot.
Ana Rosa, I can imagine that, as you said, it's mandatory to have the information translated, if I'm not mistaken, into English of all the assistance service and administrative procedures, right?
The obligation is there, but you have to know also that we have not enough resources to make that translations. For instance, here in Spain, we don't have enough European budget to do the translations, and to get national budgets to do the translations make time. So perhaps even you have the obligation, you don't have the information in English in all the pages. And besides, you can find some pages that are not only provided in English, but also in German, in French, and so. Yes.
But the question is, if we have the semantic tagging per page, in case some pages have been translated, major authorities, of course, I can understand that small municipalities, they have this, for instance, the information translated in English. I would imagine that if the citizen is searching for information in English, I mean, I don't know, I'm going to Estonia, I don't know, I speak Estonian, a thing of Estonian. So basically I'm looking license for hairdresser, Estonia. If the search is detecting that the language used for the query is in English, just to suggest pages that are translated into English.
Yes, for instance, we have a problem with the Spanish pages in one of our portals. And when you are looking for something using Spanish in your portal, the result says, sorry, I don't have the pages in Spanish, but you have these pages in English. So the results are shown in English, and you have a warning saying, I don't have that language, but I have this other one.
So for this kind of use case, we don't need this kind of linguistic system property here, if I'm not mistaken. That was my question.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, maybe let's ask the others also to confirm or infirm what we just discussed.
Do you think the linguistic system should be kept, or just to simplify at this stage we drop it?
And we really talk about the provision of the service, or the languages in which the public service is available. So not only the web pages.
Yeah, in any case, we can also list it on GitHub, and then people can still respond on it once we send over the full report. So you can also take it offline.
Yep.
Okay, but I think then it's a good time to move on to the next topic, because we do need to keep the time in mind, of course. So the next one, also going back to your comment, Ana Rosa, is the location in which a public organization is provided. So as you see on the top left again, the use case. So the location in which I'm interested in. So in this case, it would be in Sweden at national level. So I think a couple of questions here. Which codes to use to start with? Because we have country codes, but we have also more detailed location codes. For example, the repository of links used in nuts and allow codes. In the CPS VIP, we recommended or proposed ATUs. So that's also something we need to decide on what to use here.
Could you please explain the difference between the ATU and Knudsen law?
Do you have more information on this, Florian? Or
But those are
ATU?
slightly different code lists, but I don't know by heart where are the differences. But what we could do is share with you pointers to the different lists and quickly check whether there are important differences. But I know, for example, that also nuts and low in terms of code lists are used today for different things. And indeed, as Marco says in the chat, today for the metadata for URLs, nuts and low are the ones that were agreed upon. So by default, we assume this is the preferred option, but yeah.
Yeah, unless there are reasons not to use it, of course, or yeah.
Oh, but that's good. Marco is telling us that the SDG prescribes. If I'm not mistaken, is the level of territoriality. The country code is at country level, not law is at regional and local level. Regions at the 3 different levels, NUTS 1, 2, and 3.
Until 6, huh? Not
So,
until 6.
Node 0 is the country code as well, but it has a difference at least regarding Greece. So the country code in ISO is different from the Node 0 for Greece, but the rest of the Node 0 are the same ones than the ISO code.
Okay.
I think let's tackle the discussion. To what level would we need to go? What level of details? In order for the search results to be optimized, and I understand that we should probably go into the municipality level.
Yes, of course. We already did it in the SDG metadata, as Marcus said, is until the law if the municipality is the competent authority.
Yes, George is also confirming this. I think it makes sense. And also it's Valentini comments before. And here we have the relationship between the location and the public service as well. So if we are talking about the geographical coverage of a public service, it should go to the location level of the municipality, right?
Yeah.
What is the added value? Because Google, for instance, is not capable of, the engine in Google is very hard to provide these very streamlined results in a very generic search engine like Google, if the information obviously is not tagged in the websites.
Indeed, so as Jorge mentioned, taxes and criteria may differ between municipalities. So in that case, it would be interesting indeed to be directly linked to the municipality itself if you're given the right search terms.
Okay.
And the other thing that we need to discuss, so we can look into the codes, and also because the metadata for URLs I've already defined a lot in there. But the second thing we need to discuss is basically for what do we need to use the geographical area or the location? Is it for both public service and public organization, or for only one of those two?
I want to challenge this with all of you. Me as a user, I would say at service level. I'm interested in the service. No, I want to know, okay, this service, I'm looking for a service in one particular geographical area, but this is my perception. What do others think?
SDG tagging metadata is at service level. Yeah. So we shouldn't change it at all.
Good. Any other input on this? Valentini agrees. Good. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
George from Portugal, I guess you also agree, because you were talking about municipalities, on different services at municipality level.
Yeah, and also Marco.
Which is not contradictory, of course. Huh? You can indicate detailed levels for the public service. That's good. Okay. Shall we move on?
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is the language of the web pages. So as we discussed before, the language of the service itself, there was some discussion as in, is it necessary or not? But here we propose that the language in which the service is provided can be very relevant for the user to know. So if someone doesn't agree, please let us know. And again, the same codes apply as we discussed before. And here we also introduce the web page concept, in which so when you're going through the results, you want to click on the right page. So of course we include the web page as within the model, and then also next to the URL. Are there other important concepts that should be included? If you have any ideas.
Do you think, based on your experience, because indeed, as George is pointing out, there are a huge number of services. From a realistic point of view, do you think at this stage it's going to be a burden for you to look into these linguistic considerations of all sorts of pages? Or so it's something that maybe could be implemented in a second stage, or is something that right now you think it could bring added value and is information easy to be tagged across hundreds of pages? I don't know. I'm asking if this linguistic thing is desirable or not at this stage.
At this regard, I'm thinking on the barriers that the different implementation have for the linguistic variants. So what I'm trying to mean is there are some legacy systems that can only provide templates that people fill with different languages. So and those legacy systems usually do not support too much meta tags to do things, or semantic tags to do that. So I see difficult to use these legacy systems, and it is difficult also that the competent authority changed the system, because it's a huge invest to do it.
I understand, Ana Rosa, that if possible, it's good to have it, but we should not oblige all administrations to provide it.
Yes, it is correct.
No, absolutely. What we are trying to build here is a best effort approach. If it's possible, it will enrich, and the results will be much better. But if it's not available for whatever reasons, but my question was more on this linguistic system at this stage.
Yeah, indeed, Miguel. And to that extent, Valentini also made a comment
It's not only the national page to be in English, it's also to have this documentation and
yeah, like what I mean is we have to have our pages that are notified in the repository in English. Okay, we all agree on that. It's an obligation. Sooner or later, we have to do it. But it's another thing. You can, I'm sure it has happened to you also. You can go to a website that it's not in English, then you select to see it in English, but you get the information, but you can go on up to a point. I mean, if you have to download some application forms, or there's documentation, references, links to the legal framework, you know what I mean? All this should also be in English, and that is different from just having the web page in English. That was my comment. So yes, I think we all agree that it brings added value, this meta tag, but I'm not sure about our availability to have it there in English as well. You know what I mean?
It can always, obviously, it's going to, I mean, what we are doing here, it will have flexibility. It can be kept, and obviously it can be an optional class or property, right, Florian? Because we haven't yet discussed what can be more mandatory, less mandatory.
Yeah,
exactly,
we are not yet at the stage of cardinalities, but yeah, go ahead, Valentine.
Oh, no, it's exactly that. I can see it as a meta, that it's there, but I'm not sure if it has to be, a mandatory thing, like the service description, for example, which is, obvious.
That was my feeling, Valentini. That's why I was asking. Yeah. I think making it mandatory at this early stage could be an overkilling thing for everybody.
We won't make it. Simple as that.
Yeah. A very unrealistic approach, let's say.
Okay, and another thing, sorry, regarding the web-based entity. We were discussing if it makes, it has added value to see the language of the web page in the results in the search. And I was thinking, since you know that the links that your Europe search returns are either, are for sure in the national language and in English. I don't see the reason to display this information, not have the meta. It's two different things. You can have the metadata, but it's not, that doesn't mean that we will display this tag in the search results. Did I confuse everybody? What?
I don't know if it's not mandatory. Why shouldn't it at least be optional? If it's available, I would be interested in knowing that the service is provided in a given language.
I'm talking about the web page, not the service. The web page entity has also an attribute language. And what I was thinking is that we already know the language that the web page will be available. Why displaying it? That's what I'm trying to say.
I would say maybe Georges, you want to react, but I think on your Europe, it's definitely true that normally everything should be in the national and in English. Of course, as an end user, I'm not always supposed to know that, right? But if you use it,
exactly.
If you use your Europe a bit, you could quickly get to that point where you know that you will always find the information in the languages or in the typical languages. But as a random end user, I'm not sure I would know that.
But imagine even if it's, of course, it's mandatory in the regulation and every page has to be in English. But imagine for some reason, some page can't be in English. Should there be information that not available in English, or I don't know, as a best practice? I mean.
Valentini, what do you think?
I think that at the end we will have to prioritize also and select the labels that we are gonna display in the results. And I'm thinking now that, remember that we said that we cannot make this the link to have a lot of information. It has to be user friendly and practical and all that. So I don't know exactly what you had in mind, but I was thinking about, I don't know, 3, 4 extra tags in under the returned link. So let's not overdo it. And I think at the end of the whole exercise, yeah, I see a reason in a lot of this meta to be displayed in the user, but even at that point, at the end, I think we will again have to leave some out and decide what's in. So having that in mind, I said that I want to say it's important to see the language of the web page. I'm saying again, not the language of the provision of the service. Since if you're going to display only 3, 4, 5 things, then okay, I can live without the language of the web page. That's all. But we'll see at the end.
Yeah, it's a valid point, I think. And once we have a model, I think we can also agree on, okay, amongst this information, everything should be normally relevant for the search results, so meaning the algorithm, while some of them only should be relevant for the user as a human. I see.
Yes.
You agree. Yeah.
I think it's crystal clear that this feature is very challenging, and at this stage maybe it's not very realistic. So maybe at this stage we can drop it, Florian, because we have more things to discuss, more potential tags. So we move on.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll include it in the model, but it will be used by the algorithm, but not directly at this stage for the end user. But we'll come back to that for sure once we have a model agreed. Good. Yeah.
So at this stage, yeah, we are at the end of the first use case, which resulted to, so you saw in the previous steps, we build up each time a part of the model. And this was the initial model we proposed. But based on the discussions then we had today, we will update, of course, our initial model and add the discussed issues on GitHub, which you can review and react everything and react on, so that we can work towards the next webinar to a more final state. So what we want to do now is discuss some additional concepts that initially were not identified as highly relevant as concept, but perhaps as relevant, or other concepts that were not in the initial list, but we do find them very interesting to consider based on our experience with CPS VIP, with the SDG in the past. So therefore, we had a second use case focusing on different concepts, which Florian will tell you more about.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Max. And as Maxim was stating, so we basically start from the same use case. So registration of a vehicle in Sweden while moving, and now we focus on certain other parts. For example, you see that the event behind this entire use case is the movement, the fact that I am moving to another country. So that's one thing we would like to discuss as part of this use case. And then what we also observe very often is that, of course, you have one service that is the first one, the entry point for the end user, but then you have many other related services or required sub-services that are also important in certain cases. And that's where we'll need to discuss briefly if we need to capture something over there for the search results and for displaying information. And then there is, of course, the part where someone is interested to know if the service is free of charge or has a certain cost. And we can, of course, argue whether this is needed for an end user to look at this and to take a quick decision whether or not he or she wants to click on the link. And something that I think, Valentini, you mentioned, the fact that as a user, I can use different channels for applying and selecting a service. And related to those different channels, you can have different contact points, which in this case could originally be an online form, so that you can get the procedure fully in a fully digital manner. But we know that there are other types of contact points, contact details. And finally, there is the question about, once I click on a link, there are a list of evident types that could be argued whether or not it's useful for the user to check what he or she will need to prepare in order to apply. But it's also, so what you see here is all those information, a lot of them, we challenge the fact whether they should be there, yes or no. But simply we wanted to use this use case to discuss it with you. So let's move to the first one, which is the live event that is behind this example, where basically in also Annex 2, you see that the procedures have been categorized according to different live events. So is it something that is useful for a search purpose?
I think so.
I see Valentini said yes as well, George as well, Marco also.
Marco. Okay, good.
Okay, I think, and the next question is, we have live events and a few business events, or which type of list would you need? Should it be very detailed, or should we start basically from the regulation? By, of course, I would say yes, but do you have comments on this?
Business services are not that well described in the regulation, and it's a huge black hole that we're still trying to figure out. If you just put business event as a general concept, I'm not sure if we'll have, we won't have the necessary detail to define which kind of business event, because there'll be thousands of services inside that box, and it's a big box. So I'm not sure. In terms of business events, I think we should have more detail, because if I'm looking at Annex 2 by itself.
So maybe, could we maybe take as the basis Annex 2 expanded on business events, to have something as a starting point, agreeing with all of you? Do you think that could be an interesting exercise?
Yeah, expanding Annex 2 would be an interesting exercise.
With some business events defined altogether. Okay, Ana Rosa also, I think she agrees on.
However, I think we should merge in Annex 1 and Annex 2, because I agree with Jorge. Annex 2 is too limited, but Annex 1 is very extensive. So we should look into Annex 1 and then reuse categories of that annex if they could be of help in the Annex 2. And don't forget that procedures are not only Annex 2, at least from the information point of view, they are also Annex 1. So we cannot use only Annex 2.
Yep. Oh, it's a valid point. So I understand that, you hear me? Yeah, I understand that we can propose something combining the different, or taking as input the different annexes and see whether for an end user, it would make sense to reuse those terms.
The advantage is we are already using the Annex 1 and Annex 2 classification. So now we can take advantage of that. But of course we can analyze if we miss something on the classification, or consider both annexes and then extending them.
Yeah. Okay.
I see that Annex 2, as it is now, let's say for live events is quite a good starting point, and the language is, let's say, very citizens oriented. But it's true that, for instance, business events are totally missing. But my question is for all of you, Annex 1 and these information areas, in a way, should be suggested in the search engine, because for me, they look very, sometimes administrative oriented. I'm not sure if a citizen will find this meaningful in some cases. So I was wondering whether when you are typing in the search engine, at least like in Google, sometimes you get suggestions based on this.
But Miguel, take a look, for instance, to the N1 category in the Annex in the Annex 1.
To those in the column, you mean in the right column, or what do you mean?
No, in the Annex 1, you have from A to Q points or areas, and then you have several sectors within an area.
Yeah, for business, I see. For business, there are.
Yes, you have. There not only one. There are several areas.
Yeah,
For
taxes,
businesses.
goods. Okay. I was asking. So in your view,
Annex 1, no Annex 2. Annex 1.
Yeah, Annex 1. Yeah, I see. Public contacts, funding a business, funding services. Okay.
So
yes,
in the right column, you also have a more detailed classification.
Yeah, like a second level of granularity. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, at least in Portugal, for this N1, the licenses and authorizations, we have like 2,000 procedures listed.
Yes, of course.
2,000.
Yes. But I'm trying to say,
so
starting from Annex 1,
in one line. Yeah, and Annex 1 is more granular, but still not enough in terms of businesses. That's my point.
Yes, of course. I agree with you.
So Jorge, we can maybe suggest we can complement this with something more detailed for business events, right? This is what you are suggesting. Yeah,
CPSV has a higher level of granularity at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be indeed, George. It will be a source of inspiration as well, and probably will reach out to all of you also to share lists that you may have used for business events, so that we don't start from scratch. But okay, we'll come back to this offline. I propose also contacting you through GitHub or asking it. Yeah.
However, Florian, we should also explore the possibility of doing this classification in several dimensions. I mean, for instance, N1 is indeed a very big box, but perhaps if you combine that classification with a different dimension with the sectoral domain, then you can have a thinner grain. Yep. Not everything in the same taxonomy, but using different classification topics.
Yeah, like we used to discuss with the taxonomy of public services. Yeah, indeed,
Yes.
where we combine different views.
Thematic areas. Yeah. I think this topic is very, very interesting and very important. Probably is something to be discussed and looked upon together in a specific webinar. Let's say it deserves a different, it deserves some discussions. Probably this is one of the potential webinars that we can hold in coming weeks on this topic.
Yeah, okay, let's discuss that. Let's continue with the model for
Let's
now.
move on just for the sake of efficiency,
And quickly on this case, you see that as part of the example, for example, Maxim showed before that the initial public service we found was the vehicle import and verification of origin. That was the first public service. And then we saw that depending on the cases, for example, if your vehicle is part of, is coming from an EU country or not, you can end up in more detailed public services or specific cases. And so our question is, first, do we need to capture this as part of this scope, of this exercise? And then if yes, of course, how? But yeah, I'm first interested in the first question.
Here, I would like to remember the conversation we have in the past meeting. I think it was with the Italian colleague, that we have different grouping of procedures, and even we have different terminology to denominate those kind of different range procedures. So sometimes there is a hierarchy that you need to represent. There is a high level procedure that is composed. It's not a procedure by itself, but it's composed by several procedures in a specific order, or at least in a specific precedence from each other. But there are also other procedures that are not belonging to the same super procedure, but they are related somehow. They are optional. You don't require to do it, but they are in the same field. So in that regard, I don't see now if that relationship can come from, for instance, the taxonomy we used, or no. Or it is beyond that taxonomy, and it could be useful to have the relationship also represented. But of course, the most important is to represent this hierarchy of procedures.
But so you think, Ana Rosa, that it's important to have the hierarchy represented to improve the search results, or to be displayed directly at the right level?
The problem is sometimes it is not that. For instance, I cannot talk on behalf of Italy, but I can talk on behalf of Spain. And the registry of a vehicle involves several private and public procedures. So I'm not going to talk about the private procedures in Europe, but even regarding only the public procedures, I need to speak about it. So I don't have a procedure by itself that covers the rest of procedures. We don't have a vehicle registration procedure that is composed by other procedures. It is not. It is a concept. So in this case, what we have is a information page that comes from the first obligation, information obligation, and in that information page, it is explained that what you need to do, what steps you need to do for the full registration. So in that regard, I don't know how to represent it, because it is not a procedure by itself. We don't have that.
Yeah, but it's always at national level. So, I mean, are we going to present this at European level, for me, it's too big and too complex. It will take simply too much space, or am I missing something?
Yes, for instance, for the businesses, when you try to open a business, normally in Spain is at municipality level, but that doesn't mean that the only thing you need to do is at the university, at the municipality level, because depending on the business, perhaps you need a license from the regional government or even a license from the national government. So depending on what you are talking about, perhaps the scope is something. For instance, the registration of a vehicle in Spain is like a national big procedure, which is not just that. At the end, when you fulfill all the requirements, when you pay the taxes, the municipality taxes, when you pay the regional taxes, and so on, at the end you have a national procedure that finalize the registration. But with the best businesses, is in the other way around. I mean, you may have to do different procedures, and at the end, at the municipality level, you get the license.
What I would say, Ana Rosa, I understand the complexity, and probably it's a concept, as you said, some of these domain areas or administrative procedures in the gateway, in the annexes, in practice is a concatenation or a cluster of different individual services to be executed independently or with some dependencies. But I would say that from a searchability and findability point of view, if the country made the effort of creating like a page summarizing the different steps, the different services you need to activate, to undergo, this should be the first result you should get in your Europe portal, right? So I don't know from a modeling point of view what is the implication, but I would say that this page needs to be tagged as the metadata page to be displayed in the search result, containing all comprehensive information about this major area that is regarded in the gateway as a procedure, even if it's composed of many procedures. So from the user perspective, at least, this is my understanding.
But it could be a procedure or not. I mean, in Italy, they call it procedure. In Spain, we don't call it procedure.
Okay, but it's a page explaining what it takes to do the whole thing. Involves many procedures.
And it's
so
at national
it is
level.
desirable to land on this page, no?
Yes, if you are not looking for a specific one, if I'm not looking how to pay the municipality taxes for the vehicle registration, and I'm only asking for the vehicle registration in Spain, I should be pointed to the general information as the first result.
Voila. So from a semantic tagging point of view, this page should consider all this kind of generic procedure should be allocated, let's say, to this generic page.
But we will have a granularity problem here if we don't specify with what level of granularity do we consider an actual procedure. For some countries, you will have this size. For the other countries, you will have another size or another level of granularity. And I'm not sure if it makes sense for the user.
We need to specify. I mean, when, for instance, and in the example I put, the vehicle registration is a national information, but the business license is a municipality information. Those both pages are those information, but that doesn't mean that should be at national level. I mean, the municipality should also now until 2022 should also to provide these general information pages explaining how to do things in each municipality. So at the end, if to open a bar, for instance, in a village, you need to do things outside the municipality that should be collected in these general information pages provided by the municipality. Don't you agree?
I'm thinking of what George said. My understanding here is that it's not like the level of granularity of the result will be dependent on the level of granularity of the search. So I can imagine that if we tag individually every single page, we manage to do it. Let's say you have the municipality of Faro in Portugal, and it's been tagged as this page. You get a license to open a business in this sector. So you can reach to this level of granularity at page level of the municipality. If the citizen is querying at this level of granularity, this is the end result. But if the query is at very generic level, license to open a business in Portugal, a hairdressing sector, I could imagine that you land in a more generic page that needs to be tagged as a generic page for this particular business event. So it's the generic page of whatever competent authorities, AMA or whatever in Portugal, or the business portal, the generic business portal, no?
Yeah. So it's true. So at what level are we modeling? Because how do you represent that? How do you?
Let's say in the best case scenario, you should be able to to model at the granularity level of the detail of the municipality and the specific business event, but in the best. But if not, we should be ready for a much higher level of shallow level of granularity. Honestly, I don't know. I don't understand what is the implication, but in a way, the model should account for both approaches, and the level of granularity should be dependent on the search and on what is available on the other side. Of course, both things should match together.
Because if you don't have a higher level of abstraction, if you don't have a higher level of abstraction, you might generate some confusion on the user side, because if he just searches register a business, and he ends up in Portugal, and he ends up with 300 different results for 300 different municipalities, it will be a huge mess, because he won't be able to. He will have to search in which municipality he wants to. Yeah. So you should have two levels of I agree. But what you could have is a different concept of like a composed service or composed procedure that has more granular procedures attached to it or something like that. So you can, I don't know, make one from the other.
And Valentini, I saw your comment. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, to the example we were just saying, it also depends on which actual links we notify. Is it the Faro district in your example, municipality webpage, or Portugal or any other member state has implemented a central portal, and those pages are the pages with the metadata, and those pages are in the repository, because the search engine, as explained again and again from Ion in our IT clinics, right, matches also looks in the links that finds in the repository. If it's there, fine. If it's not, it's never going to be returned.
Yeah,
correct.
That's true. That's my understanding. In a way, the granularity of the search results will be dependent on the granularity of this semantic tagging. If you do it at a individual page level, individual procedure between all competent authorities, of course, the granularity will be there. But if you cannot do it you can only do it in national repositories, the level of granularity will be much shallow. No, that's my understanding. What we are building here is to be in the long run to be adopted and to be tagged at all sort of pages containing administrative procedures for all sort of competent authorities. But as Ana Rosa pointed out, there is legacy, and probably it's not feasible in many cases. But for as long as you have national portals or whatever, where you have high-level information, at least the result will point out to the citizen to this level. That is not very granular, but it's a starting point, right? This is my understanding.
Yeah, well, we need to consider that every procedure we have notified to your Europe is related to an Annex 1 or Annex 2, that at the end you have Annex 2 related to Annex 1. And we have information for this Annex 1 as a general rules. When in those pages you explain the overall situation in your country. So if I to open a business in Portugal, I need to be referred to a municipality. That is explained in this overall information page. So as Miguel said, I think that when the scope is not focused on a specific geographical region or area, then the first result should be the information page, not the procedure page.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Depending on the countries, you can define the level of geographical area that is important, and if it's not mentioned or in the query, or if it's at national level,
exactly,
it should get to the national or the national portal by default.
Yeah, in any case, we will reflect on this based on this input, and maybe also, Florian, we will contact the colleagues. We will reach out to the colleagues of Italy also to understand much better what is their problem, maybe to find a compromise.
Yeah, I don't think they have a problem. I think they do it in a certain way.
The complexity, let's say, the problem, the complexity of modeling this kind of detail or granularity of services.
Yeah. Well, in any case, yeah, we'll indeed propose something and then also share it as part of this proposition, this updated model. Good. Let's move on. Maybe very briefly, is there an interest to have a cost information, the fee that is applied or not?
The question actually for me is whether this information is available in such a straightforward way.
Also, yeah, exactly. But that we can also leave optional. Huh? But the first question is whether, as an end user, is it interesting to get information about the potential payments or fees I would need to pay?
Well, I would say it would be interesting, but it might not be possible to have an actual value. Yeah. You can say it has a cost, but I'm not sure if for every service you can have a value. I'm pretty sure you can't.
The problem here is the maintenance of that data, metadata. I mean, you of course you need to have that information in your page, in the competence authority page, but this data is changing at least yearly, so it would be hard to maintain if we use it as a metadata of the public service to show in the results, and so
yes. And also, okay. I do agree with all of you. I mean, from a user perspective, I don't say it's the main motivation or the main information in a preliminary stage you want to find out.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so we can model it and keep it optional, but probably there will be further discussions.
Yeah, Valentin, you're right. It could put off everybody. I mean, because in public administration, we don't have this possibility of online sales or having a discount. Anyway.
Good, but so decided to move it all. Yeah. Well, okay. Let's see it in a proposition how we tackle the costs. And on the channel side, don't worry, we are almost at the end. On the channel side, related to the discussions we had a bit earlier, or to the point made by Valentini, do we want to capture different types of channels, like email, phone, online form, etc.? And if yes, then the web page that we discussed earlier would be one type of channel.
Could also be quite complex to provide this information, taking into account so many procedures, services, competent authorities. Yeah, or it's kept, as you mentioned, depending on the information and the links you provide in the repository of links. At this level of, yeah, voila, you keep the level, but it's an open question, meaning we could really say whether it's not needed to have a channel. Yeah, well, I mean, for at least for the 21 administrative procedures, it should be digitally implemented, so the interaction should be digital. Valentini wants to take the floor. Yeah, I'm thinking that I would like to see the results as a user, I mean, okay, if it's fully digitally, or I can also have it, or only digitally, or there is also a front office available and I can go there and blah, blah, blah. So actually what I have in mind, maybe we can display at the results the type of channel, if you know what I mean, like only digital, physical, or both, or and not the details like which email, which web related to channel. I mean, that's the way I define channel in the return results, like digital, physically, both, only one of them, or yeah. Yeah, I think it is indeed a way that we include a type of channel, and then we decide what we insert within this code list, or what are the types that would be accepted. Correct? And Rosa, you say that about contact details, maintaining it outside of competent authorities portal is problematic. Yeah, so probably something that would be difficult to maintain. Okay. Any further comments on this?
I support what Valentina said. Perhaps we can go. We can include the type of channel to access the procedure for the citizen. What Valentini explained.
Yeah. Miguel, you're muted. Yeah. Sorry. You mean Ana Rosa to the channel to request to interact?
No, the type. If the procedure is online, is available online, or is available by email.
But the channel available to execute the procedure to.
Yes.
Yeah, and in a way, I mean, because there is the obligation to digitalize 21 procedures, that in practice, I know, is more than 21, because some of these procedures are just a cluster of many services behind, plus the other 5 directives. So if this information was available, it could be also displayed in the search in a more outstanding way, because I guess there is also there will be some interest to promote, I mean, for as long as it's relevant to the search, of course, not to promote for the sake of promoting. But.
Yep. Okay. So let's include an initial proposition with a channel type, and let's see with all of us, all of you, through GitHub, if you have specific input to be included as part of this type. Yeah. Okay, Valentin. But yeah, I propose not to dive into the front office right now, but something probably to be discussed further on.
We need to close down, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And the last part on this additional concepts concern the evidence and the link between evidence and public service. Of course, at this stage, we don't see why evidence should be indicated directly at European level. Also considering the complexity of the discussions we had before with the different cases or purposes that leads to different public services. So is it okay if we don't include it at first, or is there someone that does see evidence as required? Yeah, okay. The others, do you agree with Ana Rosa? Were not needed for findability? Yeah. Well, okay. Also considering the time, I propose to move on. But if there is a need to discuss it further, don't hesitate. Note that the link between CCCV, so the core criterion and evidence vocabulary, and the SDG OOP, once only principle implementation, are tackled in separate discussions. So if you're really interested into this in particular, you can also reach out or to your national coordinator for the SDG. Good. Then we had also planned a mural, but we won't do it for the sake of timing. But so I will still put in the chat the link to the mural. As last time, you can indicate whether you find the concepts that are indicated there in the mural as relevant, yes or no. And we can, based on that, also decide whether we include it. If a majority of people find it's relevant, we can include it in the model and in the next proposition. But we will also combine this with the inputs you provided through the spreadsheet. So don't feel obliged to do it, but if you are interested, you can, and you haven't contributed to the spreadsheet, you can still do that.
And to be clear here on the concepts, these are concepts that were identified by us as not relevant. So the idea was actually, if there happens to be a concept that you think is indeed very relevant, then we can still consider it. But at the moment, we didn't consider it. So that's why we wanted to cross-check these concepts. And also for you to see, okay, what are the concepts that were not taken into account but might be relevant?
Yeah, good point.
Wow. Okay.
So feel free to have a look and come back to us or indicate your opinion over there if you feel that we need to include something else.
Okay.
Yeah, and otherwise we also drove on the spreadsheet, so indeed don't feel obliged.
No.
Yeah. So the next steps.
Yeah, and let's wrap up quickly if you go directly to the next part. So based on the inputs and the discussions today, we will share with you, of course, the recording as well as the notes of the webinar. And thanks a lot for your participation today. We'll also create an updated version of the model with some tables with definitions proposed, mainly based on the regulation as first source, and then on our discussions and other existing sources such as CPSVP. And yeah, from there we will give you quite some time to review and share your inputs through GitHub as the by default channel. And based on that, we will also have an additional webinar planned on the 3rd of May. So you can already save the date. We'll send also an invitation a bit later. And from there, the idea during that webinar will be really to agree on the propositions made. So really agree on the almost final model. So, okay, good.
Yes, and I would say to wrap up as well that there are 3 aspects to further discuss and explore. First of all, by us is the creation of a code list for output. Then to complement business events to what is in Annex 1 and in Annex 2 of the regulation, to have a proposal for a more enriched and detailed business event list or categories. And then the issue of complex procedures involving a subset of services, what is the right level of granularity, how to tackle it. That's what is in my mind. I don't know if I'm missing something else. So
No,
these are
those were the majors, indeed.
Okay, these are the 3 major points that we need to dig in coming weeks. Okay.
Guys, sorry, I just realized, have you scheduled the next webinar for 3rd of May, you said?
That's the idea, yes.
Okay, it's the Greek Easter.
Oh,
You can do it without me, fine. But
holidays for you, Valentin. I'm afraid.
we are also here, yeah. We have a different Easter.
We'll check quickly
Just
for
the entire week. Can you tell us, it's the entire week from the 3rd till the 7th?
It's the whole month, Miguel.
The whole month, come on.
Actually, Easter Day is on 2nd of May. So 3rd of May is also a big bank religious related holiday here. So
late in the week, would that work for you, or is just the entire week?
Yeah. Later on the week, yeah.
Miguel, probably we will need to take this offline and make a proposition.
Yes, but it's
because
to know
maybe for other countries it won't work.
We will discuss internally. Maybe we can try in Ana Rosa. The 3rd of May is not holidays in Madrid, right? Because on the
it is.
Because it's Sunday. That was my feeling.
Yes, 2nd is Sunday, so the 3rd is holiday.
Okay,
yes.
We will reschedule it. Thank you. We take it offline. Thank you.
And if you are looking for the information to share input, that's on the next slide for a getaway. 4th of June is perfect, but that's 1 month later, Valentini.
Valentini, please, it's too late.
So we'll share again this information for how to provide your feedback. But don't hesitate, of course, to start already if there are things that we haven't tackled today, but we'll be in touch for sure. And thanks a lot again for your contribution. I hope this was a valuable meeting for you, but it was certainly for us.
Please share it with your teams and go to GitHub and you can comment there with more detailed comments.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And we'll raise the discussion points on GitHub directly as placeholders for you to contribute. So please stay tuned for that.
Yeah,
thanks
indeed.
a lot.
You can
Thank you very much.
Expect further communication from us with the next steps.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
And sorry for the
Thank you.
time.
Bye.
Thank you.